All righty, we begin the town meeting program here for Thursday, August the 20th. Good morning and welcome. Or if you're hearing us online, I don't know if it's morning, evening, or if you're really bored at 2 a.m. and just felt like learning something. But we're glad to have you here. Glad to be sponsored by Cordova Wireless Communications, your local cell phone and wireless data provider, which provideth your local talk program. And this is about as intense a local interest story as it gets, other than maybe if we're talking about taxes, and it's school. How are things going to unfold as school gets ready to begin during a pandemic? We're going to learn directly from the sources. Superintendent Alex Russin and School Board President Barb Jewell are our guests for this conversation. We'll talk about this multi-phase plan that they have in mind, and you'll learn, at the very least, a basic overview, not to mention some reflection on the process that went into developing this whole plan. And in the program, you'll get details on how to find the real nuts and bolts type information, so you can, if you want to read it and go over it in detail, they'll explain where that is. So we bring you that conversation now. School Board President, School Superintendent, and myself on how the schools plan to reopen amidst COVID-19, the subject of our town meeting talk show today. Alex Russin, Barb Jewell, obviously the start of school is something that is basically captivating the nation at all levels, from public schools, private schools, charter schools, universities. But as we so often say in Cordova, we do things in Cordova based on Cordova's situation and Cordova's desires and Cordova's status and so forth. So Barb, just what is your sense of things overall as we kind of get ready to face the new school year? I mean, has it been a big challenge, or did the solutions kind of present themselves, do you think?
Oh, I think it's been an enormous challenge. And the administration has worked really hard to gather as much data and address as many scenarios as we can at this point. It's challenging because we don't know what tomorrow's going to look like. Yeah. So we're having to plan for something that we've never faced before, and we don't know how it's going to go. So I don't think the solutions presented themselves at all. I think that the administration worked really hard to develop solutions based on science and data and information about what other schools are doing and information about what the community wants and what's happening in the community and what our students need.
Okay. And Alex, do you feel like the dialogue with the community and the teachers and all the stakeholders was pretty robust? Did you get the type of input you wanted?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that we provided a number of opportunities to engage with the community. We did a little bit of survey work. We had some working group folks get together as part of the superintendent working group. And then a lot of conversation on the street regarding how people are feeling, what the school year may or may not look like, and really trying to explore a number of different scenarios just based on the information that we had coming at us at really a daily basis.
And Alex, I'll stay with you on this. Do you feel like that Cordova was able to stay Cordova focused, that concerns that rage through national news and so forth were able to be put in the proper perspective relative to what our kids need in our town based on our COVID caseload and so forth?
Well, that's certainly an interesting question. I think as a community, Cordova has done really well in stepping up to the plate in really recognizing the needs of the community. And that goes from everything from wearing masks to physically distancing themselves on the street and in social such situations at times. And so I think that while the start of school, at least, may not be what everybody is hoping for, right now it's it's the capacities that we can offer to the students, given the situation that we're facing. And the administration will be working with and communicating with the local medical team on a regular basis to understand really what the health status is of the community and how that may impact engaging kids in teaching and learning this year.
Okay. And Barb, same question to you. Do you feel like Cordova drove its own narrative, or was it influenced by more of what we were hearing from outside in other states and other parts of the country?
Oh, I think that while that information was certainly taken into account, because this is larger than Cordova, I think that the board and the administration and the community members who are involved really looked at what's happening here on the ground. We were paying attention to what is happening here for us, and so that we could make the best decisions for our kids and our families and our community. It looks really different here than it looks in New York or Boston, and so we need to design a different response.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I ask that question, of course, is that, there will be a tendency on the part of some people, I'm sure, to say, we shouldn't do such and such because look at what's happening in Minneapolis or look at what's happening in Tampa or whatever. And so I'm glad to hear that you guys were able to design your plan with a very Cordova-centric approach, which is what it seems like the population really wants when these decisions are getting made. So it's a phased approach, and let's talk now about those. Barb, maybe tell us about there are three phases. What happens in phase one?
And I'm actually going to ask Alex to answer this because as the person who really designed this system, I think he can best speak to the specifics.
Okay.
If you don't mind.
No, not at all. Alex, phase one.
Sure. So phase one starts with the first week of school, which, of course, starts on the 24th. And for the first 2 weeks of that phase, we'll have teachers and staff in the building delivering online instruction to our students remotely. And part of the rationale behind that was to get teachers back into the building and staff back into the building, interacting with each other, given our new sort of environment. And so we want staff to be really familiar with protocols and procedural types of things that we need to have in place when students return back to the building. So really the first couple of weeks is really readying the buildings for student return. And that leads into phase two. Phase two will start off in week 3 of the school year with some groups of students, some grades of students in the building. And part of the phase approach includes separating or splitting the students into different cohorts, 2 cohorts. And part of that rationale is because we are limited in size, of course, in terms of our physical space in the classrooms, and trying to split those classes into different cohorts will allow for us to have smaller groups of students in the building, interacting, teaching and learning, and so forth. So the phase 2 will include weeks 3 and 4 of the school year, where cohort A will come to the building in the morning, and a separate cohort A will come in the afternoon. And whichever cohort is not in the building at the time, that cohort will be learning online during this particular phase. And again, this phase stretches over a 2-week period. As we move into phase 3, that's weeks 5 and 6 of the school year, we will be having all students back into the building, but still maintaining those 2 separate cohorts. So cohort A of students will be in the buildings in the morning, and cohort B will be in the buildings in the afternoon. And again, our phased approach and our cohort approach really allows for smaller groups of students to be in the building at given times. And so really, that phase 3 will take us really to the end of the first 9 weeks of school. And in between the phases, we will be reassessing the situation, the health status of the community, and making any minor adjustments or major adjustments should the case may lead to that. But we will be working with the local medical team to have those conversations to determine the health status of our community.
Okay. And Barb, back to you. What was the thinking behind doing things in phases as opposed to, something a little more all in?
Again, it really was to allow us to step carefully into return to in-person learning and teaching. We're going to learn as we go in terms of safe ways of doing these things. We're going to gradually increase exposure while monitoring the impact of increasing that exposure. It does give the staff time to figure out things like how to time classes, kids moving from classroom to classroom in the junior high school, for instance. It gives the elementary teachers time to figure out about hand washing break and how to handle snack time. It's sort of these new processes and practices that we're going to have to engage in to keep everybody safe. Okay,
Alex, anything to add to that?
No, I think that was a great response. And again, having our staff who will be implementing the new procedures and practices and teaching them to students, allowing for them to really become familiar with that, those processes, I think, is critically important so that when students do arrive, we are at the ready to implement those with as little trouble as possible.
I assume, Alex, that you had a lot of teacher input on this, and in the larger debate across the country, there's the obvious fact that bad outcomes for kids are very rare, but teachers are not kids. How are the teachers responding to this? I would think they'd have to be largely on board for it to proceed.
Yeah, so we had a fair number of teachers in our working group conversations. So certainly folks have contributed that way. Email correspondence with ideas and questions for clarification certainly have come about. And then again, those one-on-one conversations, really to hear some of the feedback that teachers have had. Certainly there are staff members that are concerned and they're worried and they're cautious, but we have a great staff here in Cordova, and everybody really is all in. Teachers want to be back in the buildings. They want to be in front of students and engaging students on a regular basis. We understand, teachers understand, our support staff understand the importance of making those connections. And while starting off the year, again, in an online format isn't what anybody hoped or wished for, but that cautious approach of welcoming students back to the building in a very deliberate way, I think will pay us dividends as we move throughout the school year.
All right. Again, we're speaking with Alex Russin from the schools, Barb Jewell with the school board, and talking about the reopening of schools this year in a phased approach here on the town meeting program. Barb, is the online learning that starts out in phase one, where everything's pretty much online, is that going to be a lot like spring was last year?
I appreciate that question because, last spring when this just hit so quickly and took us all by surprise and we had to pivot really quickly, we basically had to build the plane while we were flying.
Right.
And so, the administration and the staff, even on their own time, have spent time researching online teaching and learning, curriculum modules, technological supports. And I think we know a lot more now than we did last spring. So there are things that are going to be different. One thing is that the administration and the staff are working really hard to build resources for parents so that they have places to go to get help, to get information, to learn about these tools that their students are using. Also, we're going to be taking attendance much more rigorously, whether students are in the building or doing the online. we're going to use regular grading procedures.
Mm-hmm.
It felt a little unfair last year to expect students to participate as rigorously or regularly when everything was so complicated and unconnected. But we're going to start this year with that structure and supports for students and families, and really have high expectations that I know our students will meet. They're going to be in classes 4 days a week, either morning or afternoon. They're not going to be school Friday, and that's going to allow teachers to do planning and to do maybe some one-on-one instruction and helping with projects with individual students. So those are all changes from last spring.
Okay. And again, Alex, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would basically say that as Barb was responding, I just want to reiterate the phased approach, right? We're not talking at this point in time about online learning happening for the whole school year, right? We are starting this way with an attempt to ready the buildings and ready our staff for the return of students. I think one of the advantages of doing that potentially is that if we do have to move to an online sort of format at any time in the year, students have been exposed to that, parents have been introduced to that notion, and hopefully the transition from in-person to online, again, should we need to go that direction, will be just a little bit more seamless than what it was in the spring.
Okay. And Alex, you actually touched on the next thing I was curious about, so we'll stay with you. What happens if there is a large-scale community outbreak?
So the medical team here locally has developed a matrix, sort of a decision-making matrix, I guess some people might refer to it as. But we will be working and closely monitoring the health situation here, as I mentioned. And in each one of those levels, it sort of indicates what the epidemiology of the community is, the number of cases, the amount of spread, for example, and we will have correlating actions related to our school operation. So at the worst case scenario, a level 5, for example, might be large community outbreak and spread of COVID throughout the community, and that might be a trigger for us to go to directly to an online sort of operation, for example. On the lower end of that scale, of course, the level 1 being no cases for a period of time in Cordova, that we would be opening the building and having classes in person, as sort of our plan indicates.
Okay. And we'll get to where people that really want to drill down into the nuts and bolts of this can take a look at that. But before we go there, and Barb, we'll come back to you. This idea of the students being kind of in subgroups, cohorts, as they're called, is going to be a little bit different. Some things about scheduling or how they interact with teachers. How will the students know all of that? What group there is, who their teacher is, what their schedule will look like?
So families are being contacted with staff. There is already some information in Power School about student schedules. There's opportunities that have been scheduled to speak with the school counselor virtually to address schedules, and staff and teachers are going to be reaching out to parents to let them know what cohort they're in, what their schedules are going to be. Okay.
Good. So all that information will be out. No doubt we'll end up online in some form or another too. So let's do that actually then quick. If somebody would like to look at this full plan, and there's a fair amount of reading involved, but it's good reading. It's good quality reading, at least from the version of it that I saw. Barb, what's the way for them to be able to do that, to access the whole strategy?
So those documents are on the front page of our school district webpage. So if they go to the Cordova School District webpage, the very first thing they're going to see are these plans. And then there'll be additional documents below that really give all of the detail.
Okay, so it's just basically as easy. It's kind of like when you go to cityofcordova.net, the COVID-19 thing is right up there at the top. Your site is
Yep.
cordovasd.org, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right, good. So if people are hearing this maybe for the first time, which is kind of hard to believe because I know people are very interested in this issue, but if this is maybe the first reminder that things are falling into place for anybody, you definitely want to recommend they go to the site and get the full details. Sort of lastly, and most important, I suppose, and Alex, will start with you on this. What do you want the parents and the families to know as far as what's coming? What's your main message to them?
Oh gosh, there are probably lots of things that I'd like to share, and I guess I would just start off by saying that we are all faced with some unique challenges this year. Certainly, nobody has asked for this pandemic, and naturally we haven't expected it, but we are all experiencing unique challenges on different levels, and I want to recognize that each family is experiencing unique challenges and working through them in their own way. And another thing that I would, I guess, like parents to know is that we are excited to get the school year underway. We are excited to begin engaging with students, albeit at least initially in a little bit different ways than what we are accustomed to. And so I know that teachers can't wait to start seeing students in person and really engaging them in meaningful ways. So with that comes patience, right? There are lots of things that are still unknown. But what we do know is that we'll be ready for the students and we're eager to engage them. And lastly, I guess I would like to say thank you to the parents and to the community at large for the amount of support, the amount of feedback, the amount of conversation that has happened in the community, really wanting what's best for our kids. And, we may have different opinions about that and different opinions on how to approach that, but I'm real proud to be a member of the community, and I want just to say thank you to those that are out there listening.
All right. Well, and we're glad to have them listening. We're enjoying being able to visit with the two of you. Madam President, bring it home. What would you like the parents and the families to know?
I don't know. Alex said all really good stuff. I'm not sure I can top that, but I am excited to get going. I know that teachers have missed kids have missed their teachers. I've heard more students tell me how they just want to get back to school, and I'm really excited that we can do this. And I, too, am grateful for the patience and the investment that the community has had with this process. And I have every confidence that we will have a great school year, and we will continue to be proud of all the hard and good work that our students do.
Well, and if I had, if Robbie was young enough to still be in the system, I know the thing that I would want to know the most is that you guys are remaining in Minuteman status, basically, and are ready to essentially turn on a dime in order to be able to react to anything unusual that might come up, because it has definitely been an unusual year. And Barb, it sounds like that's first and foremost on everybody's minds.
Absolutely. The bottom line is that we will keep our kids and staff safe. We will keep our kids and our staff and our families safe. And as Alex mentioned, it's being monitored every day by multiple people in conversation with all of the health experts and the Department of Education. And health and safety is our primary mission.
All right. And Alex, maybe finally, just to be sure, a lot of the details on safety protocols, hand washing plans, sanitizing plans, distancing plans, all the nuts and bolts are in these documents we mentioned online that people can go look at?
Yeah, and we are updating our website on a daily basis and sometimes multiple times a day, but those documents have started to be sent out to parents through email lists and posted on our school district's Facebook pages as well. So there will be multiple ways for people to access that information.
Okay, good. Well, I thank you both very much for joining us, for informing the community, for reaching out to us to have this show. We're always happy to do that. And, of course, if we need to do another one at any point as things evolve, I want you to feel free to call on us. But for now, I'm glad you're excited. I'm glad the people you serve seem to be excited, and it's been good talking to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, JR. I appreciate the opportunity.
School Board President Barb Jewell, Superintendent of Schools Alex Russin, our guest today on the town meeting program. And of course, if you missed any of this or want to share it with anyone or listen to it again or however, you'll be able to find it at youtube.com/Cordova TV. Our thanks again to Robbie for creating that YouTube channel so we have somewhere to park all of this that's easily accessible. Big thanks to Cordova Wireless Communications for sponsoring our local talk program, done on demand. So if you ever have any thoughts about a show for us to do, you can always let us know. I'm J.R. Lewis, glad to have been your host. All of the 10 a.m. hour programming you're entitled to will be forthcoming. We wish you a happy and safe day, and we'll see you for the daily briefings in the 1, 5, and 8 p.m. hours right here on KLAM.